to that.
All right. Welcome restart. Welcome to This Week at Church 520.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We will be covering the Bible, and we are still in 2 Sam. If you like weird things like this, go ahead and subscribe.
Join,
Anyway, let's get past this weird moment and just get into the Bible. Good grief. Like, subscribe, all that fun jazz. But, we're just going to talk about the Bible.
Okay.
Last week, we had covered the fact that Absalom had been killed by Mr. Joab and his lackeys. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we left it off. Now, this week, we're in chapter 18, starting in verse 19. Now, this is after the fact that Absalom had been speared.
Yes.
Run through with a spear, and also been thrown in a pit and rocks put on him.
Yeah, they buried him and all that.
They did all that. Now, Ahimaaz, which was Zadok's son, which is one of the priests that was going to go with David, but he said, no, go back. I need you to be my eyes and ears of what's going on.
Right. They were the ones that were coming with the tabernacle covenant, the Ark of the Covenant.
And Ahimaaz and his buddy, I believe, Jonathan, were basically the go-betweens.
Yeah, the son.
Yep, they were the sons of the priests, so they were the go-betweens to make sure that they were getting the message to David.
Yes.
Right? Anyway, so with that message getting to David, right, they had took message like, hey, Absalom's coming. You need to get out of this area. So he gets out of the area, but Ahimaaz stays. And then the battle ensues. And then Absalom dies. And now Ahimaaz is saying, hey, Joab, let me take some word to David about what's happened today. He's like, no, you're not going to go. And then he actually sends a Cushite, and Ahimaaz is like, no, seriously, I want to go. Mm-hmm. Let me go. And he's like, why would you go? You don't have anything to say. And anyway, he gets him to agree. So Ahimaaz takes off after the Cushite, and he actually outruns him to David. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, he fast, right?
He's a quick fella.
Now, David is sitting outside the city that he had exiled to, mm-hmm. Waiting for word. I am assuming, especially sitting out at the gate, he's kind of anxious about what's going on, right?
I would think so.
He's got people fighting.
Mm-hmm. There's a little battle happening.
Fighting battles. Also, even no matter what his son did, he still wanted his son to come home.
Yeah.
He didn't want him dead, right?
Yeah, he should have thought about that the 40 years they didn't talk, but we're not going to talk about that.
It didn't say that he didn't talk for 40 years.
Or they didn't forgive him. No, wasn't that he couldn't see him?
No, he didn't see him for 2 years. He was back for 2 years.
Oh, right,
and then he brought him.
And he was like, I want to see my dad.
Yeah.
And it was the fire.
Yep.
That's true. It's been a while.
Yep. And
continue.
And then he was still there for 40 years after that.
Yeah, and that's when he got salty.
Well, yes. I mean, extended salty. He was already salty.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any hoozles. He still wanted his son to come back, right? Yes. He wanted a mended relationship. However, that did not happen. Yeah. So,
it's too sad.
Ahimaaz runs like a crazy person, gets to David, and David says, hey, what's going on over there? And he says, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my Lord, the king. Mm-hmm. And then David asks, is Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz says, When Joab sent the king's servant and when Joab sent the king's servant and me, your servant, I saw a great tumult, meaning a mulling about,
a big ruckus.
But I did not know what it was about. So it kind of totally avoids the question.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to know what happened.
Right. Well, he avoided the question, right?
Yeah.
So now the Cushite gets there after Joab gets done talking, and David had told him to stay right there. And David asked the Cushite what had happened. And the Cushite said, "There is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you." And the king said to the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" So the Cushite answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man."
He did.
So that right there says, David, your son is dead.
Right.
Now, David did not like this one bit at all. He started weeping. He went up to the chamber. He's like, my son, which understandably.
As one would.
As one would, for sure. Now,
he didn't tear his clothes, though, this time.
It doesn't say he tore his clothes.
It doesn't say, so we don't know for sure.
We don't know how upset
normally
he was.
when he tears his clothes, they say something about it.
Anyway.
But he was very, very sad.
Very sad, weeping. Mm-hmm. Joab finds out about this. He is not happy about it one bit.
No, because it says the whole town, they were excited about winning, and it was turning their excitement into
the whole fighting force, not necessarily the town.
Right.
But the whole fighting force that was coming back into the town.
But we did a good job.
Right. And they actually snuck stealthily.
Yeah, they didn't come in like they used to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like kings and armies of that day normally would. You come in with a parade and holding heads and trophies and things like that nature. Mm-hmm. They snuck in. There was no fanfare for these fellas.
They were not celebrating. It was actually turned into a day of somber. Mm-hmm. Right? So Joab was not happy about this, and he actually went up to David and said, "Hey, king.
Act like a king.
You are honoring your enemies over these people. You are disgracing them with the fact that they've protected your life, your family's life, your concubine's life, and yet you honor and respect your enemies more. So get it together.
Yeah.
And go talk to them, because otherwise they're going to all desert you." Mm-hmm. Right?
And get glad in the same pants you got mad in.
Mm-hmm. So David put his big boy pants on and went out and talked to people. Yeah, that's got to be so hard.
Oh, right? I am sure it was hard.
Got to be so hard, because obviously he's grieved. His son is dead. Mm-hmm. You know, that's never a good thing. No matter how the son acted, it was still his son, right?
But as a king, you're not you first. You are a king first. And so it would have... Yeah. I would assume that it would have been better for him to like meet them out there and be like, "You guys did a great job. Welcome home." And then gone and like wept in private.
Right. Absolutely. So
I've never been a king, so you know.
What?
I said I've never been a king, so don't hold me to that.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
So
mustache.
Anyway.
Derailed your choo-choo. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, he goes and gives his little speech, right? He rallies the troops.
Yeah.
And I'm sure goes and be sad in private, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they had defeated Absalom, which means they beat the coup.
Yes.
But Israel found itself in quite the conundrum here, a rock and a hard place. Why do you think?
Well, David did all of these things to free them, to beat the Philistines, but then, but fled from Absalom. They were like, he did all these good things, but then you fled from Absalom, and then we anointed him as our next king. Yeah, because you ran away. We chose him.
Well,
so what do we?
I don't know if it was because he ran away that they chose him. They chose Absalom before David ever ran away.
I guess that's
because
true.
he was making a coup amongst the nation.
Yeah, I guess I just thought it was some, and then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was some.
The many were like, okay, he's gone. So yeah, we agree. Let's.
Well, even if it was some and then the many, it only takes about 30% of your population to make a revolution.
I guess that's true.
Right? It doesn't take half.
That's true.
To really sway opinion, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure with limited information getting out, snail mail at that point, right?
Right. From possibly a literal snail.
Right.
We don't know.
That it would be very easy to sway opinion and stuff.
Right.
And he had spent 40 years gaining political capital out at the gate, right? So, anyway, so Israel found themselves in a real rock and hard place because, David had done all these great things, but when he fled, Absalom became the king, and then they're like, well, he's dead now. Mm-hmm. Do we just bring the other guy back?
Mm-hmm. What do you say? Do we just bring him back as the king then? Or?
Right. So I guess we'll have you back, right?
Right.
But David, having some political chops himself, right, understood kind of what was going on. So he sent word back to speak to the elders of Judah and saying, "Hey, we're all good. You're my flesh, and it's bring me back. What are you waiting on?" Mm-hmm. And also knowing this, wanted to get the fighting force that was still in Israel on his side, right? Mm-hmm. Because yes, David had his mighty men with him, his round table, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But he did not have the whole army of Israel, right? Mm-hmm. Because some stayed in Israel, and Amasa, which was made general over the army while Absalom was there, said, "Hey, I'm not going to kick you out. You're going to be my general," right? To win that favor on that side too. So it swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, and everybody came along and said, "Okay, come on back."
Yeah.
But they didn't just say, "Come on back," and let it be. They actually went and met them out at the river, helped them get across, helped them ferry, all that fun jazz. And then what's really kind of crazy is that Shammai, if you remember last week, was spitting and throwing rocks and all kinds of craziness at David and those that were with him.
Last week? I think that was 2 weeks ago. That Shimei was throwing rocks through the valley. Like as they were above, they were from the hills. He and his guys were throwing rocks at David and his guys, yelling at him because they wouldn't make a pact with him.
No. Because he was leaving, and therefore he was of the house of Benjamin, and which means he was part of Saul's, greater tribe.
Yeah.
And Saul's blood was on David's hands because he was just leaving.
Oh, I thought it was also because they were like, "Hey, make a pact with us." And he was like, "No."
No.
Oh, that was probably like 4 weeks ago then. Oh.
Yeah.
Either way, he was hurt.
Yeah, he was a bit hurt in his feels. Mm-hmm. And so he comes back and apologizes, and Abishai, which is Joab's brother, wants to rip this guy's head off, and David's like, "No, bro. It's okay. Nobody's going to die today." Mm-hmm. And he reassures Shimei and tells him to go along. And then David, coming through, meets Mephibosheth.
Mephibosheth again.
So if we remember right, Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son. Mm-hmm. So David's bestie's son. Mm-hmm. Who was lame in the feet because of whatever happened with his nurse, his nanny, when he was young.
Right.
He couldn't do the things.
Couldn't walk anymore.
Anyway, so he comes and he's very happy to see David, is glad he's coming back, and the fact that he had also not taken care of himself the whole time David was gone.
Right.
It's kind of like doing a hunger strike.
But remember, one of the people came and told David that Mephibosheth was staying in Jerusalem because the family line was there, and he was thinking he might become king.
Well, not necessarily that he would become king, but that his grandfather's kingdom would be restored.
I assume that meant to him since he was the last in line.
Maybe. I don't know that he was the last one alive. Mm. But
anyway, that's the last that David had heard about Mephibosheth.
Right. So it was actually Ziba, his servant, that David had put to serve Mephibosheth because he had given Mephibosheth all of Saul's land.
Yes.
And he needed servants and stuff to take care of it so that he would never go without, even though he was going to eat at the table of David.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's right. And then he told Ziba, hey, I'll give you all of the land.
Right. Then. Because he came and gave a false report.
Yeah.
To David.
Do you remember that? From a couple
David gave Ziba all the land.
Right.
And with that, so Mephibosheth comes, he's a wreck, he's all dirty, not taking care of himself. Mm-hmm. And he's saying how great it is that David's back. And it's real, this exchange is kind of weird, mm-hmm. right? Because it talks about the fact that, I'm lame, my servant
because David asks him, hey,
deceived me.
Why didn't you go with me? Mm-hmm. He asks him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he's like, I thought that I told my servant to go get us both donkeys ready and to get us all ready.
That's not what
I thought that's what he said.
No.
I will saddle a donkey for myself and...
So he answered, meaning his servant, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me.
Yeah.
For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself that I may ride and go to the king because your servant is lame.
Oh, right. So he's like, I'll go deliver a message on your stead.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't.
Right.
But then he lied about him.
Well, not only did he lie about him, but he also brought 2 donkeys.
Yeah.
Meaning that Mephibosheth should have been with him.
Right. It made it look bad. Like he expected him to go, mm-hmm. but then he just decided last minute, I'm not going.
And then also gave the false report of the fact that
he's staying back.
He's staying back because of the kingdoms being restored to Saul.
Right. Yeah, he was...
Yeah.
Shady fella.
So, and why this gets a little weird, right, is lame, blah, blah, blah. And it's talking about that David's an angel of God for the fact that he's back and it's peaceful. And so, and then he says, like, whatever you think is good, do that. Right? And David's like, why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said you and Ziba divide the land. Like, it's almost like David wasn't fully hearing him in the language that was used, because he's just happy that he's back. And he explains himself like, bro, that's not what I'm asking for.
He's like, no, he can have it. I'm happy you're back.
Yeah, he can have it all. I'm just glad that you're here. It was
almost like David was kind of like not hearing him, or being like, whatever. I don't need to hear all of your things, all your lies, whatever you like. Right. But you guys split the land then. Like, I'm not worried about it. I'm not concerned with you. And he's like, hey, no, I don't need any of that. I'm happy you're back. So, like, he got to show none of that was real.
Right. And, I mean, it also goes back to the fact that I think David was still reeling from his son, right? Yeah. So he may have not been in a very good headspace to really
have those conversations.
Right.
Yeah. It's probably a little tendy.
For sure. Especially with the fact that, you know, still dealing with that, but then having to rally and put his big boy pants on.
Go back to the city with people that said, no thanks.
Right. Right. For sure. Which leads us to our two key takeaways. And that is, the first one, realize that you have an effect on people that are around you, right?
Yeah.
Even though there are days where you might be having some big feelings, you got to watch, because you have an effect on those that are around you. You know, any type of leadership that you're in, you can get frustrated, yes. But showing your frustration can lead to bad things for the team that's trying to follow.
Right.
Right? So you got to realize that. And we saw that in Acts, Stephen, with his words, actually affected the people around him to the point of getting stoned. Right? And we also see within the First Corinthians that Paul is talking about, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? Because he knows that the actions that we have or the things that we say affect those around us, which leads us to 2 Corinthians 5:20 and 21, where it's talking about us being ambassadors and that we are imploring the world be reconciled to God, right?
And that's our church verse.
Yep, and that's the whole reason why we call ourselves Church 520, because we are ambassadors, and we do want to affect those that are around us to get in a relationship with God and get closer with Him, right? That's our whole purpose for being here. If it wasn't, then after we got saved, we would be on a one-way trip to heaven. However, there still is a purpose for us to be here and for us to live out. And one of those purposes leads us to the second key takeaway, and that is give mercy to those that are around you.
Yeah.
Right? We need to show mercy to those that are around us. Everybody messes up. Everybody has a sin issue. Everybody has things that they mess up on. It is up to us to show them mercy, to show them the kind of mercy that we received from Christ.
Right.
Right. And we looked at verses in Ephesians and Galatians, and it's all just a thing of people around you are going to mess up, they're going to have things that go wrong with them. Just show them mercy, help them along, help grow them, and lead them closer to Christ. Don't pile on. Don't kick them to the curb, right?
Yeah.
But be a loving person around them to help grow them, right? And in that, you'll grow yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about this week.
Yeah, it was good.
And after that, we had some delicious steak, nachos, and burritos. Because it was Father's Day, and we decided to take the tri-tip that we had smoked a couple weeks before and repurpose that into some delicious burritos and nachos.
Yeah, it was delish.
And we had good talks. Didn't get games this week. We were just too much in conversation.
We really had some good conversations.
So with that, if you would like to come and have some good conversations with us, go ahead and comment down below so we can get you that information to come and join us. If not, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe so you can come back next week so that as we continue through 2 Samuel, you can follow along with us. And
stay caught up.
Yeah. I don't know. My choo-choo is all over the tracks.
Debunk the flannelgrams.
Yeah, debunk the flannelgrams, right? Because there are tons of times where we think we heard something one way, and if you go and look at the words on the page, you're like, wait a minute. That's not how that went?
Right.
Weird.
Yeah. Well, it's like little kids' descriptions of how things happen so that it makes sense to young minds.
Right.
Then that's the only way your brain hears it and sees it for the rest of time.
And you're also like, oh, well, it was this spot on the flannelgram and they were going to this spot on the flannelgram. They must have been right next to each other. Yeah. No, those were miles and miles apart.
Right. That wasn't just like half an hour walk.
Right.
That was an all-day walk. Yeah. Debunking the flannelgrams.
So, anyway, guys, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.